Harvey, nice to see you again. I get confused. Initially, how many communications did you receive related to this case?
Well, we received the first ransom note, and then we received around a dozen emails from a man who claims to know who the kidnappers are and at least back then knew where Nancy Guthrie was.
Okay, but never have you received a communication from someone who said, like, I'm the man, I'm the one who did it.
No, we received a ransom note initially saying they had Nancy Guthrie.
Oh.
She was safe but scared. They wanted $4 million. That ballooned to $6 million by not meeting the deadline. And they said if they didn't meet the second deadline, they would kill her.
There is a particular kind of investigation that defies the standard forensic playbook, not because the evidence is absent, but because the evidence arrives through a door that nobody can fully trust.
By not meeting the deadline, and they said if they didn't meet the second deadline, they would kill her.
Okay, now this new missive, what's the gist of it?
So this man has been sending us emails over the last 4 months. He stopped a couple of months ago because he wanted a Bitcoin in return for telling the FBI who the kidnappers were. He said he knew them and where Nancy Guthrie was. So we hadn't heard from him for a while. When the story came out this week that the second ransom note said that Nancy Guthrie had died, and then it created a lot of media attention, today he sent us another note. And he says a variety of things. He says that, number one, that he is not, as he puts it, the idiot who recently called in a tip about her burial site in Mexico. Now, what's interesting about that is there was a report about somebody saying we know where she's buried in Mexico. But he goes on to say only 2 are directly involved, and I doubt they would be the ones calling to snitch on themselves. So he is saying that there are 2 kidnappers, and he had told us in previous emails that there were multiple kidnappers. There was a main person and at least one other. Now he's saying there are 2. Now, I want to just say, Michael, real quickly, I am not vouching for this guy because, look, he well could be a fraudster. But I know the FBI, because we're in touch with them, that they have been trying to figure out who this guy is. And they've been spending a lot of time on it. And they think that they're making headway.
The Nancy Guthrie kidnapping case is that investigation. At its center is not a suspect in custody, not a body recovered, not a confession extracted, but a single anonymous figure communicating through encrypted channels, demanding cryptocurrency, and claiming to hold the only footage that proves what happened.
So I'm trying to think, on the one hand, if they think this guy is just a jerk who's trying to scam money, why are they spending all this time? On the other hand, if he's legit, why didn't they pay the 1 Bitcoin he's asking, which is around $60,000, to lead them to the kidnappers and possibly Nancy Guthrie? So I just want to add one other thing, because this is where it gets interesting. He says, and he has not said this to us before, he says that he will hand them basically on a silver platter evidence. He specifically says that he has, quote, a short video of the main guy with Nancy the day that was probably her last. And then he goes on to say that he has the phone with that video in a safe location. The phone is turned off. In return for the Bitcoin, he will lead them to the phone, give them the password that will then let them look at the video as well as the addresses of the 2 people he says are the kidnappers.
Harvey, it doesn't pass the smell test here in Philly. It sounds to me like extortion, because if I'm this guy and I have this information, I'm going to give it to Harvey Levin and let you be the go-between because, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a reward out there.
There's a reward out there, but he seems more focused, Michael, on the Bitcoin than he does on the reward. He's really not mentioning the reward. He's really focused on this Bitcoin to a point where he says he is somehow close to these kidnappers, he says, and he's said this all the way along, and that he will look at the Bitcoin address, which he provided here, but he would not actually access the Bitcoin until the kidnappers were caught, because he really fears revenge.
On what may have been Nancy Guthrie's final day alive. The central question law enforcement cannot escape is not whether the informant is credible, it is whether they can afford to assume he is not. What makes this case analytically remarkable is the convergence of three systems that rarely intersect this cleanly: blockchain forensics, psychological manipulation, and investigative media acting as a live communication relay. A second ransom note has already shifted the operative presumption. Guthrie, the note claims, is deceased, and yet the FBI continues to pour resources into identifying a man who has refused to provide a single piece of verifiable proof. That asymmetry demands explanation. Institutional investment at that scale does not happen on a hunch. It happens when the internal risk calculus tilts toward one chilling conclusion: that the informant knows something that cannot be fabricated. Nancy Guthrie's profile matters here because it shapes how every actor in this case has responded. She is not an abstract victim. She is a documented person embedded in a network of relationships, routines, and digital footprints that now serve as the baseline against which every claim in this investigation is measured. The kidnappers, according to the informant's revised account, number precisely 2, a significant retraction from his earlier suggestion of multiple individuals. That revision either signals a more honest informant correcting a prior exaggeration, or a strategically calibrated actor narrowing the narrative to one he can control. Both readings carry weight. Neither can be dismissed. The informant himself is a study in behavioral contradiction. He is suspicious by every conventional standard: anonymous, cryptocurrency demanding, unverifiable. And yet his digital behavior tells a different story. Across multiple communications separated by weeks and months, including a 2-month silence that was only broken by media coverage of the second ransom note, he has consistently referenced a private Bitcoin address that was never made public. That is not the behavior of a copycat. That is not the behavior of an opportunist trawling news cycles for leverage. Cryptographic consistency of that nature is a digital fingerprint, and it points to a single deliberate actor who has been present in this investigation from the beginning. The most significant claim the informant has now introduced is the existence of a short video, footage of the primary kidnapper alongside Nancy Guthrie, captured on what he describes as likely her last day. The phone containing that footage, he says, is powered off and stored securely. He is willing to provide its location, the password to unlock it, and the physical addresses of the individuals involved. His price is 1 Bitcoin, approximately $60,000 at current valuation. That offer, specific, structured, and tied to concrete deliverables, is the first moment in this case where the informant has moved from assertion to transaction. Whether that represents genuine intelligence or sophisticated extortion is the question the FBI has not yet resolved. What the forensic architecture of this case reveals is how thoroughly the digital era has complicated the investigative chain of custody. Bitcoin addresses function as cryptographic signatures. IP metadata and communication timestamps create behavioral patterns that are difficult to fabricate consistently over time. The informant's technical literacy, demonstrated through his ability to maintain cryptographic consistency across an extended, interrupted communication timeline, places him outside the profile of a casual bad actor. That does not make him honest, but it makes him dangerous to ignore. Statistically, kidnapping cases involving ransom demands that go unmet and produce a subsequent death notification almost never result in prosecution without physical evidence. The conviction rate in abduction cases where no body is recovered drops significantly. If the video the informant describes exists, and if it shows what he claims, it becomes the single most consequential piece of evidence in this entire investigation. The FBI's decision to keep the channel open, to invest resources in tracing a man who has given them nothing verifiable, is not irrational. It is a calculated institutional bet on the possibility that one powered-off phone holds the answer to everything. The thing that will stay with you about this case is not the ransom demand. It is not even the second note claiming Nancy Guthrie is dead. It is the image of investigators maintaining sustained, costly contact with an anonymous figure they cannot trust, because somewhere in that calculation they have already concluded that the cost of dismissing him is higher than the cost of believing him. That is not procedure. That is desperation wearing the clothes of protocol.